Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and for this video we're going to go back to a classic recipe style. So I've had a few requests over on our Discord and also on our Patreon to have a go at painting one of the Slaanesh Chaos Space Marines Renegade Astartes, whatever they're called now, warbands called the Flawless Host. And when Games Workshop sent us through the new Flawless Blades for review, that seemed like the sort of perfect opportunity to have a go. So I've tried to take the same approach as I did to all of those other Emperor's Children videos I did a few weeks ago, which I'll link up to, where we're looking to make them look as cool as possible as a gaming army, still great in the hand, but just have lots of impact from distance and also not be too difficult to replicate en masse. I hope you enjoy. Let's paint. First up, we're going to address the armour, and as with Marines of all flavours, this tends to be the most impactful bit on the miniature, and particularly with these guys, they've got this horrible yet lovely pale sort of pink for the majority of their armour. So I thought we need to get that right. I did a few testers, and this is what I've come up with that I enjoy the look of the most. So over a black primer, and I like to use black primer on most of my models. You could start brighter if you wanted to, but I don't really see the need. I'm going to base coat the miniature using Screamer Pink. Now I'm going to use an airbrush for the first few stages. You do not need an airbrush. You could brush paint this on, you could sponge it on, you could dry brush it on. It doesn't really matter. You could use exactly the same paints. They're not airbrush only paints by any means, but I really like the airbrush. I'm really comfortable using it. And of course we've got our signature series ones like the Harder and Steenbeck Infinity you're seeing me using here. So I'm spraying about 20 psi, and I had thinned that Screamer Pink about 50-50 with Vallejo airbrush thinner. Now I'm moving on to the lighter colour for the pink portion of the armour. And for this, I chose to use Rakarth Flesh. It's one of my favourite paints to use, to be quite honest with you, as an off-white. And it's just a bit gross, which works perfectly for this. This pink it's kind of a fleshy pink. It's just very unpleasant, and I think it's perfect for Slaanesh. And therefore, I think Rakarth Flesh seemed like a good choice to try out for that. So I'm applying it, and I've left this in real time for the whole first pass I'm doing across the model, because you guys seem to find that helpful, and you let me know in the comments, which really helps shape the videos. So do please keep up what's helpful and useful to you to let me know. So I've left it in real time, and again I've thinned this maybe slightly more thinner than paint, but it's approximately 50-50 with thinner, still spraying about 20 psi, and I'm using a 0.4mm needle and nozzle in my airbrush. So what I'm trying to do is cover probably 80, maybe 85% of the armour I'm covering with the Rakarth Flesh, and I'm just trying to imagine the lights coming from above and maybe slightly to the side as you look at the front and the back, just following all the shapes that are on the armour. So if it's a tube, I'm going to highlight it as if light was hitting a tube. If it's a sphere, I'll highlight it like that, and so on and so forth, and also making sure to keep it nice and bright around those focal points such as the head. And particularly on these Flawless Blades models, they're kind of wearing these, power armor boob tubes and things, and there's a lot of flesh on show. So it's cool to draw attention to that. So here you can see I've had a second pass with the Rakarth, and I've just been going in the same areas as I was before, but that second pass will just start to smooth things out a little bit. Often happens with sort of whites and off-whites. Second or third pass really helps with that smoothness, but also just brightens up those sort of final stages of where we want the light to be most strong. Now, with the Flawless Host, they have this peculiar pink and purple armour scheme, where the greaves, it's the greaves, isn't it? The lower legs are purple, the backpack is purple, there's a bit of purple trim, and then there's also these little flames in the purple as well. I've chosen to use Beaten Purple here by Privateer Press, or P3, Steamforged now, isn't it? But P3 paint, and it's just a purple colour I really like, and I thought it worked well against the pink. I don't know the exact Games Workshop equivalent to this one. I'm not sure if there is, but this is a purple I've used a lot. The reason I didn't show you the pot is because it's so dirty you can't even see the name on it anymore. But I know P3 have brought back the paints, so you should be able to get hold of those at the moment. I just wanted to take a second to mention another project I've been working on, which is for a friend of mine, Greg, from the Imperial Truth, a big player in the heresy scene over the years. He is running a charity raffle for a charity called Abigail's Footsteps. I will put a link down in the description, but I'll be talking about that more and more over the next week or two. I'm always happy to help Greg out and was very, very happy to be involved in this project that he's put together to support that charity. And in essence, it's a raffle with a chance to win a painted version of one of every of the Space Marine Heresy Legions from awesome hobbyists like Omega Edge, Little Legend Studios, BB Miniatures, a bunch of other ones. Really cool project. If you fancy it, go and check it out in the description. So I've put the beaten purple where I can with the airbrush. Now, if for any reason I was worried about overspray, I would just use something like a masking putty, like you'll have seen me use in other videos. And areas I can't do it, like the trim here, I'll just brush paint it on. And because the way in which I'm going to choose to paint, the difference between the brushing and the airbrushing, it shouldn't be noticeable at all. Now here we're going to feature possibly my finest camera work so far this year, where I've started to paint in some of the purple flames and almost entirely blocked it due to the angle I've chosen to film it from. So just paint some squiggly lines, make them fatter at the bottom. The flames on the Flawless Host they're not like the hot rod flames, they're literally just sort of single squiggly lines, so they're nice and easy. So I always start at the top, and then each time I repeat the flame, I just make it a little bit fatter, lower down, lower down, lower down. And you should end up with a nice sort of squiggly kind of tadpole flame. Looks really cool. Now, to get the pink that I wanted, I decided to use some oil paints. I'm very comfortable using oils. I like the effect they give me, and I knew that I could get exactly the type of pink that I wanted from them. And in the end, I settled on these three: a red, a pink, and then a very sort of dark brown purple. So I'm going to mix these oil paints up in a little dish here, and then I'm going to dilute them down into more of a wash using mineral spirits or white spirits. I'm trying to keep the mix here approximately 50-50 with paint to thinner. I don't want it too thin because it may split out, and equally I don't want it too thick because it won't cover the whole surface nicely if I do it like that. So I mix it up beginning with the pink, adding in a touch of the red, and then I'll add a touch of that bitume colour in just to knock it back a touch, just sort of slightly desaturate it and darken it down slightly. Now, if I was going to do an army of these guys, I would just make up a huge great batch of this and keep it in a little jar. Keep it in an airtight jar and you'll be able to use that whenever you do the army. You could try and keep a really detailed sort of notes of what the mix is, but as you can see when I'm doing it, I'd be hard pushed to replicate this each time. And if you really care about it, I would suggest you make up a big batch. Now, I haven't varnished the model or anything before I do this. The slightly matte surface that we've got from airbrushing these paints on will help us in this case. It's going to help that paint sort of stain the surfaces nicely, as well as run into the recesses. The oils and the mineral spirits, they aren't going to react at all with the paint underneath as long as that's dry, so you don't need to worry about that. But you can see here how it's changing that Rakarth Flesh that's underneath. I tried this with just white rather than Rakarth Flesh, and I didn't like it. It was too bright. I much preferred it with Rakarth underneath it. It just seemed to, I guess, just make it that little bit creepier, which is what I was going for with these guys. Now, I'm being careful not to get it on the purple or other parts of the model, but if you get a tiny bit of over sort of spill, just wipe it off with a clean brush and you'll be fine. And that probably takes about half an hour to be dry enough to paint over the top of. And here I am about 10-15 minutes after it's up. Basically, I did it. I had a cup of tea. I've come back and I've decided, well, I might as well black out some of the areas of metal that are going to be on the model whilst I wait for that pink to become fully dry. And I realised at this point, of course, that shoulder pad was Emperor's Children, not Flawless Host. So I had to get rid of that and redo it. Now the oil is dry, so it's about half an hour. It's touch dry. I'm very happy with it. I popped a hot hairdryer on it for about 30 seconds just to kind of bake it off at the end. And now I'm able to paint over it, no problems at all with my acrylic paint. And here I'm just going in with the Rakarth Flesh. Now you can very often use the last paint that you did for an airbrush highlight. You can then use with a brush to do an edge highlight or some chips like I'm doing here, because it's going to go on more opaque when we're applying it with a hairy brush. And here I'm going to go around just about every edge, kind of edge highlighting style, but I'm just doing these sort of little tippy-tappy chips and scratches on there. They help bring definition between the areas, but I also just like the kind of lived-in look that they give to the armour. I haven't gone sort of all in on the battle damage and weathering on this model, so I've tried to keep it nice and simple, easy to replicate. But if you wanted to add more depth to it with your battle damage, that would look really cool. And, you know, pick a nice dark brown and do some chips with that. I think that would look awesome on this model, and that would work really well on the pink and the purple. maybe like a nice dark red-brown, something like Rhinox hide would probably look really, really cool on there. And then I've done exactly the same with the purple. I've used Gene Stealer purple here instead. I was going to use Cacophony pink, but I couldn't find my pot, so Gene Stealer looked pretty good. And here you can see I'm doing a little bit more of the chipping and stuff towards the bottom of the model, where I thought it would take more wear and tear, and then stop myself because I really wanted to go and spend loads of time doing all of this. Realised that wasn't the point of a recipe video. I hope you enjoyed the Emperor's Children series. I really enjoyed doing it, and I think you guys appreciated the style of it, where we took one miniature a little bit further. So you could do exactly the same with this one, following those principles from that video. Then it was time to do the decals, so I'm just glossing it up and then using the decals, and I will link up to a video about applying water slide transfers or decals or decals, whatever you want to call them. It's the quality of these Emperor's Children ones are some of the best I've had from Games Workshop. They're all pre-cut, which is great, so you don't have to cut around them. Just you can see there as I'm holding it, that sort of outline around it is where the cut is. So it's fantastic. And when you've got images like this, like a black one, you can just put it on, you can flip it, it doesn't matter which way up it goes. Sometimes you notice on a decal that it's got sort of white on one side and then the colours are kind of painted over the top of it, so you can only use it that way. But ones like the black one, you can flip over and use either way around, doesn't really matter. Now for his little sash thing, thought a nice opportunity to introduce a bit of sort of colour here again, and I wanted to try and keep everything kind of pale, which is why I've sort of used whites and silvers on the model rather than sort of golds and so I was tempted to maybe use black for this, but I thought no, let's go white. Pale blue is a lovely off-white colour. Kept it fairly thin because white paint and even off-white paint can be a little chalky, and I think I did like 3 or 4 coats just to get a nice smooth base coat of it. And then I thought, I wonder what that Apothecary white would be like over this, which is a contrast paint. Don't think I've ever used it before. So I tried it out and it didn't make a blind bit of difference, which is a shame. But I was now in the mood and I had the box of contrast paints out, and I thought, I wonder what I can use that would make this look kind of cool and nice and simple. And then I found this one called Briar Queen Chill. And going on, I was like, this is a terrible mistake. This looks awful. But actually it dried a little bit more subtle. And I actually think it's pretty cool. It just, again, sort of keeping the pale colours, a little bit of turquoise in there. It's very Slaanesh-y, isn't it? And actually, yeah, I really quite liked it. So again, another little recipe there, maybe to explore in the future on another model. It's always fun when something like that comes up. Now, for his skin, because most of the model was quite pale, I thought I would try and make the skin a little warmer and a little darker. So I've started off with Night Questor Flesh. This is a little bit darker than Cadian Flesh Tone, and I've just base coated all the muscles in it. And I love how these models have taken that old Adrian Smith artwork. There's that incredible piece he's done where it sort of shows exactly what this model is, with sort of exposed abs and all that, and this freaky head. I think the sculptors have done a brilliant job actually of paying homage to that artwork that he did. So yeah, a nice solid base coat of the Night Questor Flesh. Probably took about 3 coats at this consistency that you can see I'm using here. I've just got it on my wet palette and I've thinned it down with a little bit of water. Then I'm going to use Ketchcam Flesh kind of as a wash. Obviously it won't act exactly like a wash, it will stain the surfaces a lot more, but that's absolutely fine. So you can see here I'm being pretty liberal with it. If there was a large area of the flesh without any recesses around it, say like the top of the head or something, then perhaps I wouldn't bother washing it all over that. But for the sake of simplicity and not having to think too much, just wash it over. It's absolutely fine. You can see here. It's such a cool head. It's proper messed up. I've really enjoyed painting all these Emperor's Children things. I've got no desire to have an army of Slaanesh stuff, but they're a lot of fun. I hope all of you that are collecting and painting them are happy because, yeah, they're super cool. Very, very pleased for you all. Then I'm going back in with the Night Questor and just doing a few little highlights, thinking about, again, if the light's coming from above, where would it light, rather than just having recesses dark, pokey out surfaces light. I've tried to be pay a little bit more attention to how light would actually fall on it. Again, the heads are another one. I tell you what, the heads in particular on this kit, even the cone head ones, which aren't my cup of tea, if you want to take your time and paint these, like, you'll have a brilliant time. There's wonderful sort of details and weirdness in these sculpts that I think you'll enjoy. And now I start mixing in a little bit of Cadian flesh tone into that Night Questor. Again, just working on highlights. And this was easily the most time I spent on the model, but I feel like it's almost as important as the armour, so I really didn't mind spending the time with it. You know, nothing else we've done on this model has been particularly taxing in any way. So I really didn't mind spending a bit of extra sort of time and brain power on the flesh. And again, this isn't, you know, you're not going to come across this on your basic troops. Maybe the odd head here and there you will, but you know, this is your elite troops, the flawless blades. So it's absolutely worth spending a bit more time, I think, on those kind of models. That's the trick, I guess, with army painting, right? Is buying yourself time to spend on characters and centerpiece units. So you can see just popping the highlights just on a few of the more sort of raised areas like the knuckles and things, and the forehead, that type of thing. Then for the odd tube on him, I've done the same as I did with the other Slaanesh models, the Emperor's Children models, just KAbalite and Sybarite greens. I love these kind of jade greens. I think they look really cool next to the model. I've kept silvers very, very simple, just using Iron Warriors, my favourite sort of dark silver paint to use. I love how thick it is. I love the colour of it. I love how easy it is to walk into any hobby shop and buy. I love that I can thin it with a little bit of water and it doesn't really split out like a lot of metallics do. So yeah, big fan of that. And then I thought, let's bring a little bit of blue maybe into the areas that are decorative rather than functional, like these symbols. So I used Grey Knight Steel, which is, again, a much lighter silver with a nice bit of blue in it. That just was a fun little highlight to pop in on those. Now I'm giving the model a quick blast of satin varnish. It's just a finishing varnish. Its only job is just sort of unify the finish on the model, because we'd use different paints for different finishes, and none of that was really deliberate. They were a bit sort of messy, so just a quick spray with a satin just to sort of even things out. And now I'm going to do my final oil wash. Now I'm going to use sepia here, which is a dark brown. I love a dark brown oil wash on my models, you know, like a burnt umber or a sepia like this, or even black, actually. If this was mainly purple, I might have just used black. But with that lighter pink as well, I thought a little bit of brown would perhaps the black would have been a bit too stark. So got the wash here, thinned again down with just normal white spirits. You'll see it's a very, very similar consistency to like something like your Agrax Earthshade. And then I'm going to apply that to most of the model. I'm not going to slop it all over because I want to be controlled and decide where I want to put it. This is often the way I'll approach it, because by the time I get to the end of the model, I might be a lot more liberal and decide I like more of it there, in which case I'll just go back to those areas that I did at the start a bit more tentatively and just reapply it. But I'm applying it to all of the purple, little bits of the pink armour here and there, but I'm not going to put it on the skin. The purple armour and the metal is where I'm predominantly popping this oil. And just a big thank you to those of you that support us over on Patreon. If you want extra videos over there and to support what we do, all the content we create and all the things we do, we can't do it without the Patreon guys, so thank you so much for all of your support over there. Now finally, it was time to address the swords on these guys, and you'll notice I've chosen to use the smaller two twin blades. That's because I'm going to do a separate video shortly on some different sort of power weapon effects I've been working on, sort of having some fun with. So I gave this guy the shorter ones, and I just thought, how can I do power swords not the normal way, the classic way, as it were? So we've got a great video on that I'll link up if I remember. I thought, I don't just want to do them silver. But what if they were kind of like an obsidian or like an onyx blade or something like that? So painted them black. Then I've given them a coat of Eldari Emerald. Now a lot of the contrast paints are so close to an ink, they're really powerful. So even this over black just kind of tinted it a little, so it was like a really dark sort of turquoise colour, and I really liked it. This is definitely something I think I'm going to pursue in the future when I do, I guess, something where I want that kind of onyx type blade. I will play around with this technique a bit more and push it a bit further. But then I'm going to mix some of the Sybarite, which I already had on my palette from doing the tubes and stuff, mix a little bit of that into the emerald, and then I'm just going to do a very delicate edge highlight. So this one isn't a tippy-tappy one. This is me trying to be nice and accurate here. So just taking my time, using the side of the brush, getting myself comfortable, and just popping a highlight along all of the edges, the sharp edges of the blade. And then I go in and mix a little bit more Sybarite into that mix, and just do a couple more little highlights around the sort of areas, kind of the sharpest sort of corners. So you see here, this little bit of edge there, and then sort of the tip of the sword. Just again, to give it the idea that maybe it's kind of a glinting kind of stone or something, just something a bit different. And I really liked this effect. I didn't want the swords to draw attention from the model. And actually, I think we achieved that with what we've done here. And there we go. He's all done. Just stuck a normal sort of very generic base on him. Didn't want to distract from the model. Yeah, I think he's super cool. Like I said, I've really enjoyed painting these Emperor's Children minis. Thank you for the suggestion, those of you that asked for the Flawless Host. I guess it would have been nice to have had an area to show off the flames a little bit more on, but ultimately it's what may look quite a daunting scheme, actually, with the fact that backpacks are always separate, with the fact that the way the trim is all the same colour, so you're not having to paint additional trim if you don't want to. I chose to do a little bit of extra silver on his left knee here, but you don't have to. You know, in all the artwork, it's actually a very, very simple paint scheme, right up my street. Actually, I love trim when it's the same colour as the armour. And the purple flames, they're just cool, but they're really easy to do because they're not like the hot rod flames where we have to make sure we get the teardrop shapes right and all of that. They're just squiggles. So what I would say is maybe have a little practice on a piece of plastic card or another miniature before you start on the model, but just go ahead and do it because I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. Yeah, they're good fun. For me, it was about getting the pink right, I think is what's most important with this scheme, and I hope you like my take on it. I certainly do. I don't want to do this army, but I really do like this colour. I have no idea what I might use it on in the future, but I'm glad I've got this now in the recipe book to refer to and maybe use or maybe tweak sort of in the future. I've popped him next to the, can I remember, was it a Lord Exultant? That sounds right. The boss from the box. Just to show the sort of how, even though I'm painting different schemes here, because I'm doing it in a similar style, they hopefully will work fairly nicely together. And that Lord Exultant model is just about taking a basic scheme and just elevating certain elements of it for your characters and for your standout models. But I think for me, this is just the level of army painting that I enjoy. You know, the process is enjoyable. It's relatively simple. It's simple to replicate, and particularly at sort of 3 foot, these colours as well. I can pick out everything on the model. It's just really fun to look at. So if you guys have got any schemes, even obscure chapters or, you know, war bands or, you know, war clans, anything like that you fancy a scheme for, do let me know either in our Discord, in the comments here. You know, if you're on our Patrons, let me know over there, because if ever the opportunity arises for me to do it, I promise you I will, because it's fun, and hopefully it's helpful for you guys as well. So if you've got any questions, as usual, pop them down in the comments, say in the description. There'll be more details about that Abigail's Footsteps raffle that I have supported, and I would encourage you all to go and check out. Great cause, awesome project idea. Take care, guys. I'll see you next time.